welcome along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. And listen, listeners, we've got a little bit of a complaint that has come in regarding our listeners. Now, normally we try to be very grateful for all the listens that we get. We reached over 10,000 listens.
I mean, I think we're closer to 12 now.
We're closer to 12, which is amazing. But you guys, listen, we've stopped hearing from you a little bit. You've kind of gone cold on the feedback over the last, what do you say, Blake? How long?
A few weeks. 3 or 4 weeks.
All right. Yeah. So I don't know. Shake the cobwebs off. Let's hear.
I know that your lives are all very busy, but you can take a few minutes.
And let's have a chat with Sweet Tea and Coffee.
And I'll tell you the email right now. We'll just throw it all.
The whole show out of whack.
So you can email us at stc@fredoniahill.org.
I think it's because you haven't been saying it.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we got to bring that back.
That's the problem. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to get into a great episode today. This is number 62, episode 62, and we're going to get into all sorts of fun stuff. We could get into mustaches. We could get into baseball.
Yeah.
We could get into, I don't know, all sorts of stuff. We got some fun coming up. We've got Dane Phillips in the house with us, so let's play the theme music. Okay, well, as I said, we've got Dane here with us. Dane was kind enough to take a moment out of his busy day to come and sit down with us. And I'll say, Dane, we're gonna start out by just giving you an award. You are the best dressed guest that we have ever had. You can see that on the photo.
The photo that we take.
Better dress up than down.
That's true. Yeah, so Blake and I are going to have to really start up in our game. We're looking a little sloppy here today.
We look strangely similar today, too. I feel like we've got the same get up on here.
You never know. You're around somebody long enough, you just start to kind of
that's what happens.
Mold into one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to start you out with kind of the question, the most important question we'll ask you today, which is, in the sweet tea or coffee debate, where do you land?
Well, I must say it depends on the time of the day. I'd say overall coffee probably, but sometimes the southern in me, the sweet tea comes out. So I must say coffee probably if I had to pick one.
I knew that we were going to talk about this today, and I was thinking about this morning.
You've been preparing a defense because the numbers are getting lopsided in coffee's favor.
I'm looking here at the name of this show. It's not sweet tea or coffee. You don't have to pick one or the other. It's sweet tea and coffee.
This sounds a little bit like everybody gets a trophy, doesn't it?
Here at sweet tea and coffee, everybody does get a trophy.
That's right.
That's right. Okay, so what does it take for you to have a sweet tea day?
So, for me, I think it depends on if I go to Chicken Express, I'm definitely going to get a sweet tea. If it's
like the normal sweet tea, right? Because don't they have...
They have the gallon sweet teas.
Yeah, but also don't they have like a really intense sweet tea? You can get the super sweet or something?
I think it's always super sweet.
Okay, that's just what their normal is. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'd say anytime I get Chicken Express and really anytime after lunch, that's my barrier.
Yeah.
Is after lunch, I'd go sweet tea, pre-lunch, coffee, depending on how many kids I have. The more kids I have, the more coffee I drink. So,
That's right.
If I follow your footsteps with 4, I might drink coffee until 10 at night. We'll see.
That's right. Well, okay. So speaking of kids, this last weekend, and this will come out, and the time will be a little off as you're listening to it. But this last weekend was the fair, and I had the wonderful privilege of taking my family to the fair. My in-laws were in town, and they wanted to take the kids to the fair. And I saw you there. I saw you on dad duty, hanging out, doing the fair thing. How was your fair experience?
Well, the fair is always interesting because you're chasing rabbits and squirrels. You always pull up and you have a tough decision. Do you go to the petting zoo or do you go to the rides first? My daughter wants to go to the rides. My son wants to go to the petting zoo.
Oh,
and the 1-year-old is just there for the ride.
Yeah.
And so I must say my daughter won out, but the happy medium was we went to the fair or the carousel, and so my son thinks those are real horses. So
it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, he just turned 3, so maybe next year will be a little different.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I saw you there. I was proud of you. You had dad duty. The petting zoo. They'll get you. Now, it was a great petting zoo. reports back were that it was a great petting zoo, one of the all-time great petting zoos.
Okay.
Which great, way to go, Natchitoches Fair. But they'll get you because that petting zoo is extra. That doesn't come with your little tickets. You gotta fork out a little bit more to do the petting zoo. But so it was
Well,
good.
any animal that can survive my children, I give them lots of kudos.
That's right. That's right. They get paid. Okay, so let's get into the real meat of things, the real questions. You've got an interesting journey. So I mentioned before baseball. Mentioned the being in the financial world. You're a financial advisor. Would that be your official title now, financial advisor? Okay, so you've been doing that. You're doing that, and it's a family thing now. Your dad does the same thing. Your brother does the same thing. But baseball was a huge part of your background. You grew up here in Nacogdoches. Tell us what growing up was like. What was your childhood like here in the Piney Woods?
Well, it was. I feel very blessed to grow up in a town with family, and as a family, we've been here since about 1815.
Another legacy family.
Another legacy. Does that
predates us? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I tell you, it was interesting because SFA was after our family records for a long time because they have a lot of affluent family records, didn't have any poor family records. And so they're after our family records. We gave them to them about 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, we've been here for a long time.
Wow.
And my grandmother's from Cycle is where her line comes from. My grandfather's from Central Heights, and they settled there in 1815.
Wow. So what was, you've then been in East Texas and family has for as far back as you can go. Do you, what was life like growing up here? Family's been here for forever. What was childhood like?
Yeah, I think the thing that summarizes our growing up was they did a special, which is kind of a family joke now on the local news channel. If there was a busy family and a non-busy family was the name of the deal, and we were the busy family. That was an actual piece in the local news, and we were the busy family. And so, between me and my brother and my sister, we're all about 3 years apart. We're playing 2 or 3 sports at a time for everybody. And so
goodness.
my mom was a taxi driver, I think.
Yeah.
When she got off from school, she was a school teacher. So
that's crazy.
After that, we all hit the car, and just wherever we went, we went.
So growing up then, with all 3 of you being involved in multiple sports, I can't even imagine that. As I've got kids playing sports right now, and they're doing one sport. It's 3 kids all in the same sport doing one sport. I cannot imagine juggling the schedules of 3 kids doing multiple sports at the same time. So that must have been a huge part of just life as a family was revolving around sports. Busy family.
Well, it's one of those things that, I heard this one time and I thought it was real good is, any time you get to spend with your children is time well spent. So whether it's, on a fishing boat, at a baseball game or wherever, any time spent with the family is time well spent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as many people probably know, they know your family. You guys have been here for a long time. People probably know your family. Certainly know your mom and dad. Certainly your dad for many reasons. One of those being his epic mustache.
Yeah, for sure.
Which you've said, you've kind of commented that you may or may not follow in those footsteps. You're still kind of on the fence. Is that
well, you have people that are blessed and those that aren't blessed. So my dad and brother both have the mustache. They're blessed. I didn't get that gene, so I'm either the mailman's kid or I'm the odd man out.
Okay, all right. Well, I think people listening really wanted to know whether that mustache was going to continue or not.
Oh, it will for him. That's for sure.
Well, so interestingly, and people, if you're listening, if you go back to, I don't remember what episode number it would have been, but we interviewed Margie, which is your grandma, and so we heard a lot of her story, and actually, as she talks about raising boys, she gets into a conversation. One of the things she mentions is a moment with David, your dad, where she kind of goes, "Okay, I've got to now start to hold him accountable to the faith that he says that he has, and he's got to begin to own his faith. So we've heard, interestingly, we have some background on your dad's journey, on him becoming a Christian, learning what it looks like to follow Jesus, and the way that his mom raised him. So you grew up then in an environment where the Lord was a centerpiece. You guys are doing sports and all that kind of stuff, but faith's a big part of your upbringing as well. What was that like growing up as a kid in faith?
Well, I think it was, huge, and it all starts with my grandmother. She's kind of the matriarch of our family, and I think that there's an old saying that you're never done raising your kids, you're never done putting your family in the right direction, and I think family is something that was essential to her and something that she's passed on to us, and she'll share all kinds of stories with you. My favorite is on tithing, to where one time, and she might have shared this on the podcast, I'm not sure, but one time she was raising 2 kids by herself, and pretty much, and she was wondering how she was gonna buy groceries after she tithed, and then next thing you know, her next door neighbor came by and said, "Hey, something just told me to come give you some money. Here you go."
Wow.
And so she's got a lot of really good stories and a lot of good wisdom that we all benefit from.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so as far as faith, I think it's something as a family that's crucial, and our number one priority should be to raise our kids in the faith and pass that to them as well.
Yeah. So you were a recipient of that. I mean, and for your dad, that would have been something. I mean, he's starting something new in a sense. It's the first time that, or a major shift point in y'all's family was from your grandma deciding she's gonna raise these boys in a context where the Lord is honored. So they grow up learning that, and then your mom and dad begin to pass that along to you. So you grew up in an environment where that was a huge priority.
Oh, absolutely. Not just us, also my uncle, my cousins, they don't live in Nacogdoches anymore. But, one time, I think when my brother would have been a senior, there would have been 5 of us in the youth group. So, we were always, is not just my direct siblings, but also my cousins. We were all going through together, and all, both families, with Christ and church being in the center of the family. Yeah.
Now I've heard, my story is not, I didn't grow up around extended family like you did. We actually kind of lived, our family living in Midland was kind of off from the rest of our family, lived in the hill country. And so I didn't grow up around cousins and stuff like that, but I grew up in a smaller town environment. And my experience, and I've heard just a lot of people that grow up in the kind of environment that you're describing, is that what can happen is that your faith is kind of, in a sense, taken for granted. It's just the normal. It's what you see in a lot of your friends. It's what you see in your family. And so in a sense, it kind of develops in you somewhat unchallenged. It's kind of the norm. But then there seems to be a point in somebody's life where, okay, now what I've grown up with, the environment that I've been in, now I've got to make some decisions about whether or not this is really going to be my own or not. And maybe it comes through a moment of challenge, maybe it comes through a moment of conviction, but just kind of this moment where you have to really wrestle with it for yourself. Did you have that experience where it was kind of taken for granted, and then there was a moment where you really had to make it your own, or how did that?
Well, I think for most people, and I think everyone can relate to this, you kind of have, different phases. I think I was baptized at 7 or 8. It was definitely something that was meant, something that I felt. Most people get kind of stupid in their teenage years. They start becoming more selfish. They start doing things like that. But I think that, having the foundations early in life, you always know that you're God's. And so that even, as there's ebbs and flows, the foundation that's set is the key. Yeah. And I think that's something, kind of mentioned that, people might not ever accept it for them, but I think that in a family environment, some people are born on third base, think they hit a triple, and you never forget where you came from as a family. and never forget how, we're all born sinners, and any environment you're raised in doesn't change that fact at all.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's important. Well, way to just use
the baseball
way
analogy.
to have a great segue using a baseball analogy. You mentioned earlier that sports was important to you guys. It's what you did growing up, and then baseball becomes a huge part of your life coming out of I'm sure in high school too, but coming out of high school, and then even thinking about professionally. So, when did you kind of start to go, hey, I might be okay at this. This might be something that I want to pursue more seriously?
Well, I think that, and this is a piece of advice that my dad got, and a piece of advice that I've always got is, if you ever find someone that's really wise, you listen to what they say. And anytime you think you know everything is when you know nothing. And he got a piece of advice is that, you want to have high expectations for your children. And if you have high expectations, they'll reach it. So, for me, I don't think there was ever a day where I woke up and just thought, hey, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. I think that I always was given high expectation by my parents, both, academically, I was valedictorian in high school, athletically, in sports, and in all facets of life. And so I think that the foundation of that maturation begins with having high expectations put upon us all as a family.
So you felt that in those expectations you're talking about just in every phase of your life. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to do really well in sports, we're going to focus on that. It was, we're going to exceed the highest levels of our potential, and we're going to work hard in everything that we do. And that wasn't a standard that was just for you. You're saying that was something that for everybody in the family, that was kind of the way you guys pursued things.
Absolutely. An extreme version of that I always remember is, Dr. Ben Carson, where the old story where him and his brother would read to his mom, and they never knew his mom couldn't read. And I think that sometimes if you have, high expectations for your children, there was a guy that I was talking to, he passed away in 2020 from COVID, but he had a very successful son. And I asked him, hey, what do you think made him so successful? And he said, always my yeses were yes, my no's were no's, and I had high expectations. I thought, hey, that's pretty good advice.
Wow. Well, so bring us into what that journey then was like for you, playing baseball, coming out of high school, and pursuing that much more seriously in college and later.
Well, I think it was interesting. For me, I'll never forget the sports world. It's different. Until you're in it, you don't really know what it's like. But I'll never forget, going to Oklahoma State. School was always very important with me. But I'll never forget sitting down with my. They have these little people that they have the people that give you the schedules, and they had changed my degree to sports management or something. And I said, no, I want to do engineering. I want to be a mechanical engineer, so mechanical engineering. And they said, no, you're not going to do that. And I said,
no kidding.
Yeah, and I said, no, I'm going to do it. And they said, no, the coaches really want you to focus on baseball and do this, that, and the other. I said, no, I'm going to do engineering, so sign me up for engineering classes. And so that was a unique time. It was a very busy time. Because I was, successful on the baseball field, but also was, getting my engineering degree at the same time. And so, was up a lot of late nights, studying and, tests and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It definitely taught me time management. That's for sure.
Yeah. Because I don't think people realize when you make the jump from high school sports into serious collegiate sports, it is a whole life commitment to do that at a high level. I mean, you've got to give a whole lot of hours, a whole lot of effort. It's not just a hobby. There's a lot demanded of you, and so when you layer on top of that school and certainly a challenging degree, I mean, you do have to have your priorities straight. You do have to be able to set. Did you ever have a moment where, as you're trying to figure out how to do both of those things well, you kind of were shocked into reality of time management, or is that just something that you come by naturally, or how'd you manage it?
I think a part of it was, whenever I was in high school, I was drafted in high school, but I was called in the second round, so I could have been a second round draft pick out of high school, and I turned it down to go to college. And at the time, me and my dad were talking. He basically said, "Hey, if you turn this down, you have to go get the hardest degree you possibly can." And so for me, that was engineering. And
what's the logic behind that? Why do you have to go get the hardest degree?
Well, it's simple logic. Most great ideas are built in simplicity. A lot more complicated it is, the harder it is to do it. And so if if I get a finance degree and I want to go be an engineer, can I do it?
No,
absolutely not. If I get a finance degree and I want to, go teach school, can I do it? Absolutely, you can.
Yeah, I would
you can get alternative
so.
certification.
Yeah.
If I get an engineering degree, can I go be a banker?
Probably.
If I get an engineering degree, can I go work at a school?
Probably.
So the more specific the degree is, the more opportunities you have.
Yeah.
It's like a doctor. If a doctor, could they go be an engineer?
No.
Absolutely not. But they could go do pretty much anything else.
Yeah.
And so the more specific the degree, the more opportunities you have across the board. And the harder it is, the more overqualified you seem.
Yeah. Okay, man. I'm just saying that's some heavy lifting for a 18-year-old. I assume you're making these kinds of decisions as somebody that's coming out of high school, 18-year-old. Blake, were you thinking like that when you? Okay.
I was just want to play music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know. So that's really interesting. Was there ever any tension in that with you? Or is it ever like, I don't know. I just want to play baseball, or did you ever kind of struggle having to prioritize two high level activities like that?
Not necessarily, and I think that goes back to the base root of high expectations. Like for me, whether it's being valedictorian or getting good grades in school, it's not always about being the smartest. It's about who works the hardest.
Yeah,
and so. There are some people, like when I was getting my engineering degree, there are some people, there's always someone better looking, there's always someone taller, there's always someone smarter. And I had people in my class that were definitely smarter than me, but I probably worked harder than most all of them. And so, academically, I was still able to thrive. I think I wound up, with like a 3.8 or something in engineering, even while playing baseball. Yeah. And not because I was the smartest, but I was going to work harder than everybody else.
Yeah. Now talk a little bit about your faith as you come into those real formative years of high school. And I'm sure, I don't know, I certainly wasn't here, but I'm sure being a great athlete, you're drafted out of high school. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of attention and publicity and stuff that comes with that, certainly in a small town. Mm-hmm. I think that could be challenging in terms of your faith. It seems like an environment where you could get fairly self-focused pretty easily, and I'm sure you probably saw lots of that in your journey. How did your faith help to keep you grounded? How did it grow? How was it challenged kind of in that process of going from high school and into college and being that highly decorated in terms of your sports?
Well, I think there's multiple facets of that. First is I was so busy with school, I didn't have time to really do anything.
Yeah.
And so
you couldn't get into trouble.
Yeah. So, I didn't have any time to get in trouble. And also, I think that something that my grandmother, has instilled in the family as a whole is just to be upfront. And a lot of families, will struggle with just, talking to their kids or their other people in their family about things that are, a fact, that they see, or the truth. They keep things to themselves. And one thing I can tell you is that whatever she sees, she will tell you she sees.
Really?
And so I think that, the culture as a family that she instilled made a big difference. And so as far as faith-wise, when most people are influenced by their situation or by what they're around. And whenever you do such a good job like she did, and then my dad and my uncle carried it on of, building a family culture and family being first, it's much easier to stay in the faith because the culture is already built
that
for you.
support is there. Yeah.
That's right. It's when people don't have support that they normally make bad decisions.
What do you think that your parents did that, because I hear you describing a scenario where in the context of family, there was the support system that allowed for you to wrestle with the tougher questions, to have people that knew the truth about who you were, what you were struggling with, what was going on. There was a free flow of information and what was going on in each other's lives. It was a very open family system is what I feel like you're describing. How did that develop? How did your parents, that may be a weird question to try to answer, but what do you think that they did to help you guys growing up to know, hey, this is a place that's safe. This is a place where we can be honest about who we are and what we're thinking. And what did they do that helped create that environment?
Well, I think a lot of that starts with my grandmother, and that working in, like, she had to work, raising two kids like she had to raise them, and the honesty that she has, kind of is hard. You can't run from it. And, she'll call a spade no matter what you think, or no matter, it doesn't really matter. She's going to tell you what she thinks. Yeah. And so I think that, that's kind of the starting point. And then, I think from there, it's always, putting your family first. And I think that's such a big part of unselfishness, is putting your kids first and putting your family first over your own wants and needs. And I think that was something that, my parents definitely put their kids first within the family. And I think Bob Hurst had a quote that was really good, that your first ministry is to your family. Yeah. And I think that's pretty powerful.
So you saw that lived out. I mean, I'm sure you have, as a kid, you have growing levels of awareness of what your mom and dad are doing, but you're saying you watched them sacrifice and put family first, and that in turn that tells a kid, okay, then this is what really matters. It's this group, this family, mom and dad are pouring it out, sacrificing for one another. This is a place where we can be honest and wrestle with things, because there's genuine care here and self-sacrificial love, and you guys saw that modeled and gave you the environment you needed to process the harder things.
Absolutely.
So okay, so then take us back into we left off just kind of at this point where you go from high school to college. You choose to chase after a challenging degree plan. Finish with a 3.8.
I think it was 3.8 or 3.75, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's
I don't even know.
That's amazing. Way to go. That's cool. That's really cool. But at this point, is baseball kind of off the table? Are you coming through college and like, no, I'm gonna finish and be done and pursue engineering, or what did your decision look like after school?
It was a pretty simple, in a sense. My freshman year, I wasn't the highest recruit in the country out of high school. I was probably the 5th or 6th catcher nationally, so I was pretty high, but I wasn't, in the top 2 or 3. Those are normally ones that get, drafted high and don't go to college. So I was kind of in a unique little bubble to where I was probably not going to sign out of high school, but I was definitely, so I was the highest kind of those rankings that was going to probably for sure go to college. And so
pause for just a second. I don't know. Baseball's a little confusing in this regard. I think people sometimes, unless you really understand the way baseball works, the way the system works, when you say, okay, I'm drafted out of high school, but don't go play.
Yep.
What kind of decision are you making there? What's actually happening?
So what happens is that they can draft you, but that doesn't mean you have to sign.
Okay.
It's kind of like, I want to say the extreme version was Bo Jackson back in the day.
Okay.
When someone, drafted him, but just because they draft you don't mean you have to sign.
Okay.
And so the rules have changed some, but what they used to do is that if you're a kid out of high school, and let's say you fall in the draft. So like I turned down the second round, I wound up getting drafted in the 49th or so. They would draft you, and then if any of their top signees didn't sign and had extra money, then they might pay you late. They might, pay you and give you and sign you.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how it used to work. And that's why I was still drafted, even though they knew I probably wasn't going to sign, because I wanted to be sign like a first rounder, not a 49th rounder. And so the only way I was going to get first round incentives is if they did not sign several people through the draft.
Right.
Then they would. So
your decision then to go to school is about I'm gonna play college ball to increase my stock. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So I jumped in there. It's a little bit confusing when you say drafted. And so, okay. So then you're getting you said you were the 5th or 6th catcher nationally. Take us back into, okay. So then now what, as you're now have attained that status, what then becomes kind of decisions you're making?
Yeah. So then when you go to college and you've kind of had a little clout in high school, things are a little bit different. You get in, like for me, I started as a freshman. That's not usual, but in my situation, it was a little bit more common.
Yeah.
My sophomore year, I was a first team All Big 12. That summer, I was out of the college catchers, probably in the top 3 or 4 in the country-ish. And so going into my junior year, I knew I was going to be drafted, and I knew I was probably going to be drafted high. And so from there, it's, just getting ready for the draft while also, taking care of school, and then the whole draft process starts.
Okay. And what happens there? I mean, what's that like? You're just now, all the prep is done. You're now kind of waiting to see where you fall, and then a whole nother process takes place where you've got to earn a spot on a team, right? I mean, it's
different. In baseball, it's a lot simpler than it might seem. Is that based on where you're drafted, gives you your percent likelihood of making it. And the big reason is because baseball's like a business, to where say you drafted someone in the first round and they don't make to the major leagues, several people are getting fired and losing their jobs.
Yeah,
because of what they took to get that person.
Yeah.
If you get drafted in the 20th round and don't make it, nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so the higher you get drafted, the more likely they are to push you through, because if you don't make it, they're going to lose their jobs.
Wow.
And so the higher you get drafted, the higher the likelihood is you make it. And so when you're going into the draft, several teams kind of want you in certain areas, but you don't know until your draft pick, until they call you that, hey, I'm going to get drafted X position.
Yeah.
And so, like on that draft day, before going into that draft, the Padres had quite a few first and second round picks. They were supposed to pick me in the end of the first round, and I was, sitting there watching the TV, waiting for my phone to ring. They wound up not picking me, and they called me. So they used to do it to where the first round was on TV, and then the rest of it was, online. And so I was supposed to get picked at the end of the first round. They didn't pick me. They picked a high school kid instead. And then they called me after the draft and say, hey, we're going to pick you with our second pick tomorrow. And then another team would call and say, hey, we'll pick you here. What? And so it's the negotiation there. It's kind of stressful.
Goodness. I was going to say, what in the world is that like? You see this on, sports nerds like me, I've always obviously never been in your shoes, have watched that on TV. And I've always wondered as they show that on TV, man, what is that moment like? I mean, your future is just kind of up for grabs in a lot of sense. Take us into what that moment is like as you sit there and watch and listen and wait.
Well, it's stressful because your future based for the lot. It is in your hands to a certain extent, but it's also in where you get drafted. And so, because if you pass up on a pick, so say there's a team you really want to go to, but there are a couple of picks after this other team that want you. So if you pass on this one and then they pass on you, you might fall in the draft.
Yeah.
Which is what you hear about, people talk about.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's when it happens, is when they're certain that someone's going to pick them. And so they turn down a couple other people. And when that team doesn't pick them, then they fall. And so it's kind of a chess match as far as, what to do.
So what happened? What's your
So
story?
I got drafted by the Padres with the pick they told me they were going to pick me. I think I was 70th overall, if I remember right.
Okay.
So I was top of the second round.
Okay. And so then a whole nother journey begins. I assume then you're now, I guess, are you thinking, all right, I've been drafted. I'm going to pursue this. Or at that point, are you still wondering whether or not that's what you want to do?
It's at that point, it's kind of a no-brainer as far as, because some people might turn it down and go back for your senior year.
Right, because this is your junior year.
My junior year. But, it really doesn't make in a lot of instances, it doesn't make sense because they pay for your school anyway. So if you want to go back later, I mean, it's taken care of. So really, it's a no-brainer, especially if you're drafted high. If you're drafted lower, it's a lot more. It's a lot tougher decision. But if you're drafted high, it's a no-brainer.
Okay. So off you go. You've been drafted by the Padres, top of the second round. This journey into playing professional baseball begins.
Mm-hmm.
What's your? I mean, as a junior in high school. Junior in college. What's your mindset like going into that journey? Are you excited? Are you nervous? A whole new world is about to open up. What was your mindset like going into that?
Well, I think I was really excited. I wasn't all that nervous, I'd say. I think a disadvantage, which this has changed a lot recently, but at the time, there really wasn't a lot of major league players in the area, or people that had played minor league baseball. So I didn't really know anyone who'd gone through it in the area.
Yeah.
And so I'd say I was excited. It was a little bit different than what I had anticipated. But looking back on it, I should have expected it.
Yeah.
It's like you get treated like a king in college, and you go back about 20 rungs once you get into pro ball.
Right.
And you don't get back there until you make it to the major leagues. So it's like going, 10 rungs back as far as how they treat you.
Yeah. So then so you start in this real lowly, humble spot as you begin with the Padres. I mean, just on a personal level, what's that process like? I'm sure that in taking that step, there's a whole lot of soul searching that you got to do. There's a reminding yourself of who you are. So kind of there's got to be a staying grounded. I hear a lot of people talk about that when you are that celebrated and that talented, that it can become an identity thing where you can really start to believe that who you are is wrapped up in your performance, and particularly as you grow in those levels. So, what was that part of it like for you? How did you? Or was that maybe a point of struggle? Were you able to really stay connected to who I am in the Lord in an environment that I'm sure in many ways is not necessarily conducive to that?
Well, I think the biggest thing in the in the minor leagues, especially compared to college, is one, your schedule. You are when I got drafted, flew to. I was in Oregon at the time. We won a 40-day road trip. Without being home or our home base once. So we were basically lived on a bus for 24 days. And we think of a bus, it's one bus. I think we'd have 40 people, I think, on the team. And so we're all two to a seat, people sleeping on the floor, sleeping all over the place. But, most of the time you're playing at night, so you're up late.
Yeah.
And you wake up late because you're up late playing baseball. And you get to the field at, probably 1, and so maybe 12:30, and so pretty much all your day you're at the baseball field. So, the biggest thing I think is as far as professional sports is finding balance in your schedule, and I think that for me, as far as staying grounded, I think minor leagues will humble anybody, just with you're playing. All these parks just random all over the place, and you're traveling on buses. I enjoyed it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was good experiences. And I think a difference too is that the professional sports is a dog-eat-dog world to where you have to show up and play every day or you might not have a job. And so it is I'd say, when you're in it, it's hard to your identity the way it should be. You're probably so focused, especially at first, at just doing good that you don't have much other concerns at the time. And I think that's something that as you get your schedule down, as you age a little bit and get used to it, they have something called short season, which is basically to get you ready for a full season. Because if you think you played a lot in college, you have no clue how much you're about to play.
Really?
So, like, for example, my first full season, I showed up to spring training at the 1st of February. I got back home in the middle of September. And in that time gap, I think I had 5 off days or 6 off days.
Wow.
And so in college, you only play 4 or 5 days a week. And so you get lots of off days. But in professional, once you get there, it's a go time.
So I imagine that, just you describing that, I imagine it's really easy to get lost and overwhelmed in all of that. Just get completely consumed by the sport, by the demands, by the expectations, by your even just, I've got to do well, the immense pressure in that. What in what ways was your faith challenged and formed kind of in those early days of minor league baseball?
Well, I think the first kind of formation, I think, is realizing that you have teammates from all over the world. So most teams I played on, half the people weren't even from America. They were from all over the place: Japan, South America, Central America, Dominican Republic, and then even then all over the United States. And realizing that everybody has different backgrounds, everyone has different situations, and you can be a real steward of the faith to a lot of the people that are on your team.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the first thing to even keep yourself grounded, is to know that is a good ministry ground. Because when you're living in the Bible Belt and live in some of these areas, it's common for people to go to church. It's common for people to do this, but it's not like that in most places. And so when you get around people that are from those places, it makes you realize that, hey, there's a lot of people that need to hear what you know.
Was that something that was a light bulb moment for you, or was that something that you kind of thought going in, okay, this is going to be a real opportunity for me to share my faith? Or did you get in and realize just the opportunity and it was kind of like a light bulb?
Well, I'd say, when you get in, it's like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
To where, like my first roommate did not speak a word of English, and he's from the Dominican Republic. And it was a great guy, but really, couldn't talk to him, and I didn't know Spanish very well at the time, and so there's a real language barrier in baseball. But I think it's when you first get there, you're just kind of overwhelmed, and I think a big part of it is getting settled in, and that's an advantage that people have in certain parts of the country, like California and Florida. Is they know other major leaguers, they know people who've been through it, so they kind of know what to anticipate. Yeah. But when you just kind of get thrown in there and don't know what to make of it, then you just kind of have to get adjusted to it before you can kind of settle down and get things the way you want them to be.
So at this point, you're in the minor leagues, right? I'm tracking that right. What did the rest of? We talking about you're a financial advisor, okay? So you're not playing baseball now. What did that journey look like? How did it culminate? When did you know kind of this? I'm going to move in a different direction. How did kind of fast track us on the rest of your journey from that point?
Well, I was playing with the Padres, and I think I played pro ball for 6 years or so, and about halfway through, something that I never thought about is that when you play for a baseball team, every organization is different. It's a business, and I was progressing through the system like I was on track to do. I was probably on. If I kept going on the track I was going on, the next year would have been my year to make a push for the major leagues, and basically our GM got fired, which when people don't think about that, but that's like all of your bosses getting fired at the same time. And then what happens is when the new GM comes in, he puts all their people in, and it all goes back to them trying to keep their jobs, is they bring their people, their players in that they push the major leagues so that they can keep their jobs, and they get rid of a bunch of people that are already in the system.
Interesting.
So they'll either trade you or cut you or whatever. And so I was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time when that happened. And I wound up I got released from the Padres and played a couple more years with some different teams. And I think I made the cardinal mistake of any baseball player is I got married. They say that's the first, that's the end of the baseball career there.
So did you meet Rose in this process, or did you know her from before, or how did you?
So no, I met Rose. I was playing in California. I broke my hand, so that ended my season early. And Rose was playing golf here at SFA, and so I actually got back right as she got in. And just happened to run into each other, and the rest is history.
That's interesting. Okay, so you get married while you're still doing the baseball thing. What year would this have been? What year did you get married?
I think it was 2016.
Sorry, it's a dangerous question.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, brother, man.
I think it was 2016.
I was just trying to think because I remember that's a little later than I was thinking. But when I got here in 2011, you were not here. You were off. That would have been, I guess, in your Oklahoma State days.
I'd have been in the Oklahoma State to professional during that kind. Depends on when in 2012 is when I got drafted.
Okay.
But in 2011, I would have not been here at all.
Okay, yeah. So, because I'm trying to think, because that's when I met you. Rose was already in the picture, and so I was curious how that came to be. So you get married in the middle of this journey. Man, what is that like to begin married life in the chaos of the baseball system?
Well, and I think there's a lot of good things that came out of it. Most people, I think, communication is key, and I think that a lot of people, communication is a problem that they might have when you're gone. So that time I was telling you where I was gone from February to September, we were dating during that time, and so I saw her maybe a week out of that whole time period. So I think it really helped communication and things like that. And so whenever we got married, it wasn't anything different. We were already used to it, and but when you get married, you want to start having kids and having a family, and that's kind of when things change.
Yeah. So things changed for you. You're talking about that's kind of the getting married is kind of the don't do, or what did you say?
It's the end of your baseball career.
It's the end of your baseball career. So that was the beginning of the end. How did it end up kind of culminating and coming to an end for you?
Well, basically a big part of it was with baseball, age is huge. To where the older you get, the less likely you are to get a chance. Because they want that 23-year-old that they can sign and have in the major leagues and sign their big contract at 26, and they can have them until they're 34.
Right, longevity.
That's what they want. Yeah. They don't want a 28-year-old that's only got 4 or 5 good years left in them. And so,
crazy.
And so age, I knew I was getting older, and the older you are, the less likely you are to make it. And also, with the way I was drafted as a junior, and so the way the scholarship works for baseball is you have to go back to school within a certain amount of time. And that's kind of a way that the Major League Baseball doesn't quite do it right, is they do that on purpose, because a lot of people don't go back to school because they're trying to.
They just keep trying.
That's right. And then once you don't go back to school,
you lose it,
and it's gone forever. And that's how they keep all that money. So it's kind of a way they stick it to people they sign. But I knew I had the time period, so I needed to go back to school and finish my engineering degree. And so both of those kind of coincided together.
And you just said, okay, I'm gonna step away and pursue the degree and pursue just a different. I mean, is that a moment you just wake up and just have clarity that this is I'm ready to quit pursuing this, or what's that process like of arriving to that moment where you know you're going to move now in a total different direction?
Well, I think, and it kind of goes back to one thing we talked about earlier. I think a lot of times it's being honest with yourself and just saying, hey, I know this is where I'm at. These are my decisions, or this is my choices. What's going to be the best for me and for my family.
Yeah.
And not just blindly doing something with no game plan. And I think half the battle with most things is being organized and having a game plan. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to finish my degree. I worked hard for those first 3 years I was in school, and I had about 5%, maybe 7% of my degree left. And so I wanted to make sure I finished it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
It's kind of, you start something, you want to finish it.
Yeah. So when did you graduate? I'm asking you years again.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I graduated in 2018, I think.
Okay.
I think that's 2017, 2018.
Well, they say that first year of marriage, you're supposed to make as many changes as possible, right? Isn't that the advice?
Kendall, me and my wife, me and Rose, we believe in constant change because I adjusted to that. My wife, during that time, she was a communications major. She decided she wanted to go to teaching, so she went and started to become a teacher. And then she decided she wanted to be a counselor, and so she was in counseling school in her master's while we were having kids. So
y'all juggle a lot at one time. I think you do really well with it. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so and right now she's getting her LPC. So so she's about halfway through that as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I want to come back to something we kind of started with in talking about your family. We mentioned going to the fair. You're raising kids now. You and Rose are raising kids now, but you grew up in a really a strong family system. We talked about the environment where it was a place where you had to be honest about who you were. You had to be honest about what you're going through. It was open. You guys processed together. High value of family. And I'd love to just kind of wrap up, here as you think about the way that your relationship with the Lord developed, as you think about your formation as a kid to a boy to a young man and then into a man, and the role that your family played, and now you're raising kids of your own. What are some of the things that you take from your background and experience, and you kind of say, okay, as I now embark on this journey, the same thing that my mom and dad did with me, these are some of the things that are going to be huge priority for us. We are going to make sure that this is something that our kids experience. What are some of those that you think are keys and so important for you?
Well, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. First is, my grandmother told me something that's so true, is she told us that we're going to have to be better parents than any generation before us because there's so much more for kids to get into in the technology era. And I think, that's the first off. And the second, and I know you kind of feel the same way. You like to read from a bunch of dead people.
Yeah.
I think that the people you should be listening to are people in their 70s and 80s. Because those are people that are, close to the, might be closer to the finish line and have some really good wisdom they can pass on to a younger person. I think that the more you hear the whole adage, you need to make your own mistakes. I firmly disagree with that. I think you need to listen to other people to avoid making dumb mistakes. And so I think that, knowing that we have to be better parents, listening to people who have done it before and people who might have some different insight, and not be scared to be different in certain aspects, because you're either going with the crowd or you're going against the crowd. And I think in general, in a lot of aspects, if you're going against the crowd in parenting, a lot of times you're making wiser choices. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I think, that's a good word to hear. I think if you're gonna if you're going to have that wisdom in your life, you're talking about listening to people that are in their 70s and 80s. And as I think back on my life, I'm sure we could all share several different moments, key inflection points in our life where our life goes the way it goes because somebody that's been there before took the time to invest in us, and for whatever moment of clarity we had, we chose to listen to that advice, and we have all been the beneficiaries of older and wiser investing in our life, and I think that's absolutely crucial. You don't have to. I love what you said. Make your own mistakes, and disagreeing with that, you're so right that we have so much to gain from generations before us. And I think the biggest question is just whether or not we're actually investing in those relationships in a way that puts us in a position to glean from their wisdom. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of for all the different reasons what we could talk about. There's a lot of isolation right now. There's a lot of people that just simply relationally don't have those connections with people that are older and wiser. And so what are we doing right now to cultivate those relationships? You can't listen to who you don't know. Do you have people in your life that have walked there before and have been there before? And that's a huge deal. So, man, thanks for spending time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Working through that journey is cool for us to hear, and exciting for I'm sure everybody to kind of hear that journey, that story. We know a lot of people have I think tracked your journey here locally, but just to hear you give testimony to it and talk about what the Lord's done in your life and family and baseball and all that's really, really cool. So I appreciate it. Hey, if you've got feedback for us, if you've got something from this episode or from another episode that we have gone through, we would love to hear from you. We already said that. We prodded you a little bit.
I think you have to have feedback now.
You have to have feedback now.
If you're a friend of the pod, you're required to.
That's right. Man, Dane has said a lot of good things, a lot of great stuff here. I would love to hear how his journey maybe has encouraged you or challenged you. And we'd love to hear from you. So hit us back at wherever you want to do that, however you want to do that. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you on episode 63. Adios.